good to go.
Okay. Well, let's get started, everyone. Welcome to our Planning Commission meeting this evening. Let's go ahead and get started with a Pledge of Allegiance. If you all stand and join me in a pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, so real quickly on the thought of prayer, I'm gonna go twice in a row. Scandal. But this will be really brief. We've got other things to talk about as well. But since our last meeting, the 1950 U.S. Census has been released. All the details of that have been released, and I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to that type of stuff. And I actually went and flipped through the Centerville pages of the census, which weren't a ton, because back then Centerville was a pretty small town. But it was just interesting to see, first of all, a lot of names that you still recognize, lots of people, lots of families that have been in Centerville for a long time, or still in Centerville, you know, they were there. And you can definitely see how the city had grown from, back then, it was very south-centric, I guess you could say. I actually talked to Ron Randall once, and he talked about how when he opened his gas station here, he was on the north outskirts of town.
North outskirts.
So, and that was...
And the rest was just like a farm.
Yeah, it was just like farm up there, but town was here.
Yeah.
He was on the north end of town, the rest of it. So the city has definitely changed, and you can see that in the census. Like the enumeration district is very heavily weighted from to the south end, and there is a north district, but it's pretty light. So it's just interesting to see the change in the evolution of the city and how it's grown and developed, but how some things stay the same, some of the families stay the same. But anyway, interesting. I'll offer a quick prayer, and then we'll get going. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity we have to meet together as citizens to discuss the needs of the city and to talk about the ways that we would like to see our city grow and develop. We think for the freedom that we have to be able to do this, and for the camaraderie and the positive way in which we work, we ask you to bless that we can continue to do so, and that we can remember the citizens in our decisions and do the things that would be best for the city as a whole. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Okay, let's get started then. We've got a UDOT Environmental Impact Study presentation, and I'm not sure who I'm turning the time over to.
Me?
Yeah, go ahead. If you introduce yourself. And
My name is Shane Marshall. I work for Horrocks Engineers, and this is Dan Adams. Works for the Langdon Group. We are here representing the Utah Department of Transportation tonight to walk through this study. Some of you have joined us on a walk throughout the corridor, looking at the different interchanges and trying to get us out there today. And so what we want to do is bring back what we've learned, what we know, where we're headed with the study, and get any feedback that you might want to give us as we move forward. I want to say, first of all, thank you for serving on the Planning Commission. I served in my local community 7 years ago, and it is a thankless job, and so I appreciate you taking the time to do that. Usually when we would meet, we'd have about this many people show up as well, until it was packed.
yeah.
And that's not as fun as when it's not packed. But so I appreciate your service, and thank you very much. And stop us anytime you want. Ask us any questions. We can have a dialogue. We don't. So we're going to talk about what the purpose of the study was, what we know so far, and then when you have opportunities for feedback. Jensen? Well, the purpose of the study. UDOT has set some quality of life frameworks. They worked with the transportation partners throughout the state over the last couple of years and wanted to come up, what are the goals of what they're trying to accomplish? And how are they going to frame it? And they really focused around quality of life. And within quality of life, they came up with these 4 goals. Better mobility. And what I think is so cool about this little graphic that is it's sort of hard to see, and it sort of goes unnoticed, is it's not just a car. It's a bus, it's a bike, it's a car, it's mobility. It's not better cars. It's not better roads for cars. It's mobility as a whole, which is it's a different organization. They want to focus on good health, making sure that their transportation network promotes good health. They want to connect communities, and they know that a good transportation system promotes a strong economy. So you'll see these four things weaved throughout this study. Really, this is what's driving this study to make decisions on what happens to I-15, what happens to the surrounding community network. The next slide is the UDOT's mission. Their mission is to improve quality of life. You take those four things and you make our lives better. So this study, and if I say project anywhere in this whole presentation, I mean study. I did this yesterday in Farmington, and I said project the entire time, and at the end, my colleague at the time said, when he said this, he meant that. So this is a study, not a project. The study starts on the north end about Shepherd's Lane, and I say about because it's not that, there's not a line in the sand. We want to make sure that wherever this study ends, that it can connect to something on the north end and on the south end. So it goes from Shepherd's Lane on the north all the way down to 4 South in Salt Lake on the south. About 16 miles, 35 bridges, and it extends east-west, typically to the first intersection, east or west of I-15. But again, that's not a hard line in the sand, because in a place like Parish Lane, if you went to that first intersection, you wouldn't solve the problem. You really need to go to the next one, and maybe even to the next one to make it connect. So we're going to let the traffic drive, we're going to let the process drive, we're going to let the mode of transportation drive where those limits actually end and start. Next slide. So where we're at in the process, this is the overall process for this project. This study did not start just today. It's a culmination of a lot of planning efforts over the last 15, 20 years. But we are now in the NEPA process, the National Environmental Policy Act process, which really right now we are in this phase called the purpose and need and scoping, where we're trying to ask people what's wrong, what's broken, what needs to be fixed, what doesn't work for you. That's where we're at today. Throughout this process, we're going to develop a purpose and need statement, and when Dan gets a chance, he's going to walk you through what the current purpose and need statement is. And that's really what we're here to present today, is what it says, and did we get it right? We spent a lot of time collecting data, traffic information, comments. We met with all the cities along the corridor, asking them what was wrong. We did some walking. We think we got most of it, but we're here tonight to share that with you and then get it out to the public and get their comment. So that's that second step, that light blue step. Once we have that done, we're going to move into the alternative development phase, where we're going to come up with solutions. We're going to start big picture stuff and just funnel that down into the solutions along the corridor, whether that's a reconstruction of I-15, whether that is a new bike lane, whether that is a new crossing over I-15, new access, whatever it might be, whatever solves a problem, that's the next phase of this. And we'll bring those solutions back to you and get your feedback as well. From there, we just put it into the draft environmental document. We put it all together and share it with the public and say, did we get all this right? This is where we're headed. Any questions, any comments, any concerns? The department then makes a decision and publishes the final EIS, and then they go from there. We're looking to publish that final document probably around January of 2024. From that point, if there is a build alternative selected, it moves into design, and then construction is scheduled to start if they make a build decision in around 26. So we're still out there as a ways before anything happens. We want to make sure we get it right. Next page. So what do we know so far? So far we've collected a lot of information from a lot of people, and we've come up with basically there's 4 major needs along the corridors. This first slide is, I think, something you all realize if you've driven out there ever before. There's some places where the pavement is in rough shape. A lot of the bridges, 35 bridges, 9 of them need to come down in the next 5 years. They're ready for replacement. 9 of them, 13 of them, I think, 14 of them need some sort of maintenance. And then most of them aren't wide enough to accommodate any future traffic. So that's one big need. Bridges, pavements, and then when it rains, you'll see a fair amount of water ponding along this corridor, and that's just a function of being 50, 60 years old. There's nowhere for the water to go. It's the drainage, the whole entire drainage system needs to be improved. So aging infrastructure is a major component with this project. Travel time, again, this is something that when you're up in Davis County, you start talking about traffic on I-15, this does not need any introduction, right? It's pretty bad. So we went back to 2019, pre-pandemic, where traffic was sort of normal 2020, 2021, we did see a big reduction in volumes out there, and so travel times improved. But in 2019, if you were going southbound from Park Lane down to Fourth, it would take you about 18 minutes. If you went northbound, it'd take you about 19. That's 18 or 19 minutes in the worst hour of the day. So the worst traffic you could get to, it's about 18 minutes on average within that hour. You fast forward to 2050 and it triples. And that's tripling with everything else in the long-range plan built. So Front Runner's double-tracked, there's another lane in West Davis. There's another name on another lane on Legacy. West Davis is complete, 89 is complete. So everything's done except I-15, and you've doubled your travel time on I-15. So there's a major concern about what happens to I-15 from a traffic perspective.
Is that traffic like without, I mean, because I've spent more than 20 minutes from Fourth South up to Park Lane. That's like without like an accident or something. That's just
That's
like moving traffic.
Normal, everyday, peak hour traffic without an
Okay.
accident,
Okay.
for sure. You could have spent a day on I-15
Yeah,
in Davis
yeah.
County if there was an accident, right? So yeah, that is a typical morning in one direction and a typical afternoon in another direction. So next slide. 9 interchanges, 8 interchanges throughout the corridor. One thing that's pretty unique about Davis County is there's not a standard interchange in this whole county, I don't think. I worked for UDOT for 25 years before I moved over to the consulting community, and I didn't apparently spend enough time in Davis County. I had no idea that there was this many
No
different
one person
interchanges.
did, maybe.
Excuse me?
No one person did, maybe.
I think so. I think one person came in and did this and then left, and then they did something else and then they left. But
Yeah.
it is a different, you have different access to the interstate. But in a lot of cases, those are starting to fail and you're starting to get backing onto I-15, or you just can't get to I-15 because of the interchange. So that is a major need that we've identified throughout this course. Next one is safety. The little map on the right, those bubbles are crashes on I-15 in just 2 years from 2018 to 2020. Significant number of crashes along the corridor. Some of the reasons for that are the narrow shoulders. That section down in the southern end, the inside shoulders may be a foot, 2 feet in some places. The S curves down the southern end also are sharp and hard to see around. So a major focus will be to fix the safety concerns along the corridor. And then finally, and this is not in priority order, but the last one we'll talk about today is limited connections from a non-motorized perspective. Getting through I-15, we want to make sure that when we're done with this, I-15 is not a barrier to your communities, but you can get through it. It's more permeable. You can get east to west. Davis County is developing significantly different than it was even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, as you all know. We're starting to build on the west side much more than we had in the past, and making sure we can connect those communities is an important facet of this project. So we're doing a lot with that as we met with, I think we walked 5 interchanges along the corridor to get a sense of what's broken and what needs to be fixed. And I'm telling you, if you ever walk Parrish, start on the other side of it. Don't walk through the interchange. It is a fairly scary place to walk. But that's going to get fixed. We want to make sure that that is something different after we're done. The department currently has about $1.7 billion slated for this section of I-15. And so they want to make sure they do it right. This is probably the last major investment that we'll see in this corridor. And so when they walk away, they want to make sure that it's not just for cars, it's for other modes as well. Connecting to transit is also very important. When we did that walk, we noticed that there was this plywood sidewalk built from Fifth South?
Yeah.
Fifth South over to the Centerville, no, not Centerville.
No, to the,
Front Runners
Woods
Cross.
Cross.
Woods Cross, the Woods Cross. Yeah, so there's this plywood sidewalk built from the road over to the transit stop. That's not something that we would be proud of, but something we want to fix with this project. So, as we move forward with those needs, we will identify, we'll look at different resources to be studied. We will identify the impacts of these. Well, once we have those alternatives in place, we'll look at each of these and say, what are the impacts to each of these resources with each of those alternatives. You can see, I won't read them all for you, but noise is usually a big issue when we start these projects. One difference about this section of I-15 over others is there's noise walls for most of it. So the community is fairly protected from a noise perspective, but we'll analyze all of that and make sure we get them in the right place once we're finished, if in fact there is that solution being picked. I'm going to turn the time over to Dan. He's going to talk about opportunities for input, but do you have any questions for me before I take a seat? All right. Thank you all.
All right, well, I just came home from vacation, so this is I got home an hour and a half ago.
Oh.
So if I suddenly fall asleep or something, no, that's what, no. I used to be a county or a planning commissioner as well in Bend, Oregon. So we have that in common. I didn't know we had that. Okay, so my job, Shane leads all things technical for the environmental study, and then my job is to help lead all things tied to communications and making sure we're doing engagement, all those things really well. So I'm gonna go through and talk about some of that stuff. As Shane mentioned, we have gone out and done some of these walk audits already and met with a number of the cities. One thing we try to do in these environmental studies is get out as early as we can and try to make sure that people know about study and that there's a path to be engaged. And so we've been doing a lot of that so far. Oh, I noticed we even have one of our little signs out in front of the building here, which is great. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and walk through this. There's no other way easier than just read through it. But Shane mentioned in the very beginning that we do want your feedback on this, and this is something that is going to be posted on our website. It actually is all posted, and we do want people to weigh in and help us to say, if we have the purpose and need for this environmental study correct. So the purpose to improve safety and replace aging infrastructure. So like Shane talked about, the bridges that need to be replaced, provide better mobility for all travel modes, strengthen the state and local economy, and better connect communities along I-15 from Farmington to Salt Lake City. The project purpose consists of the following items, which are organized by UDOT's Quality of Life Framework, categories for good health, connected community, strong economy, and better mobility. So for those first two, good health and connected communities, to improve the safety and operations of I-15 main line and the I-15 interchanges for bicyclists, pedestrian crossings, and supporting roadway network. Be consistent with planning land use and growth objectives and transportation plans. So, and I think Shane touched on this, that this environmental study isn't just all of a sudden, it all starts here. It's incorporating all that work and planning that has been done for years before and bringing that all into what we've got today. And then the last one, enhance access and connectivity to front runner, connection to transit, regional trails, and across I-15. And then for those 2 points of the quality of life framework are strong economy and better mobility. So tied to those two things, replace aging infrastructure on I-15, enhance the economy by reducing travel delay on I-15, and improve mobility and operations on I-15 main line, the interchanges, supporting roadway network, transit connections, bicyclists, pedestrian facilities, and help accommodate projected 2050 travel demand. So part of that is also just taking into consideration all the growth that is anticipated. Like Shane also talked about, that when you're these don't come out along every day. So when you're doing these major infrastructure projects, that's kind of one of the challenges that we always have of working with the public, is helping them not just see what they've got today, but think about what it will look like in 2050, and then give us thoughts and ideas tied to that anticipated growth. So in the environmental process, not only do we want thoughts and ideas about alternatives, but we also, we then have to screen and look at those alternatives. And sometimes that can be a frustrating thing for people when they want to know why that pet project that they wanted, or that pet idea isn't incorporated. So part of that is having people give us feedback on the screening criteria that's used to look at all those. So there will be, like Shane talked about, right now we're at the process of developing the concepts. And then we'll have level 1 screening that looks at the purpose and need that we all just read through. And then later on, we'll have another layer of screening that will look at the environmental impacts and costs. So that's taking that last slide that Shane had where it talks about all the things we look at, from wetlands to air quality, noise, all that stuff will all play a role in that second level of screening, looking at the alternatives. And then it takes all that stuff, helps refine the alternatives, and then we come back out with that draft EIS to the public. Okay. So there are 3 formal comment periods throughout the environmental study, And one of those just started on Monday. And so it's a 30-day comment period where we're looking for thoughts and ideas from everybody about how they experience the corridor. And the ways that people can submit comments are to go to the website. That is the best place to go, and that's that first bullet there. When they go to the website, there's a spot where they can just type in a comment where it asks for their name and space of the comment. There's also a GIS map where they can grab an icon, drop it onto the map, and then they can type in their location-specific comments. So let's say, somebody's wanting to figure out how to use Parrish Lane better. They can, drop that and say, hey, when I try to walk across here to work, this is dangerous, or whatever it might be. The second one is to send just a traditional email, and for those people that still remember how to send something in the mail, they can send it to us through that physical address. If any of those things, people get stuck or need help, or just if they have questions throughout the environmental study, they can give us a call anytime. We're happy to help out. Next slide. And then the one thing that is different on this one is just the Facebook page. So if anybody also wants to, or if any of you, we have a number of elected officials that also just want to help share information. So a lot of times they'll send out either the website or they'll send out the Facebook link to get a hold of us. So that's basically it. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, so I guess, well, help us, I don't know where to start with this, but help us understand, exactly how we can help you with this process. Obviously, as planning commissioners, we live here in Centerville. We may look at the city a little bit differently than the average citizen does.
Right,
Because
right.
we sit here and talk about this stuff like a bunch of nerds, but whatever. So how can we help you with this process?
Yeah, I think the best way, there's two kind of initial thoughts on that. One is just encourage people to hop on the website and leave a comment. I mean, just help them to get involved and get engaged. The other thing is to leave, when they give comments, to be as detailed as they possibly can be. So if there's a time of day that something's a struggle, or there's, whatever it might be, to give as much detail as they can, that helps. Things typically in these environmental studies are usually really benign right now, but when the alternatives, as soon as somebody sees the line on the map, you guys all know this, then everybody gets excited, right? And so we would anticipate that after when we have the draft alternatives, we come back out to the public and they start seeing lines on a map, they'll get a little more excited then. So what we try to do is engage people as early as possible, let them, give them the contact information, let them know if they're frustrated or whatever, just call us, and one of the things we try to do, and UDOT is super supportive about this, is having us not only say, hey, come to us with your comments or questions, but we're happy to come to you as well. So sometimes if there's an HOA, or there's a trailer park or whatever, any type of group that wants to talk shop, and you guys hear about that, please direct them to us. We're happy to come visit with them anytime and give information. But yeah, those are
We
two.
do have a Friends of Centerville active group. That would be one to look at on Facebook.
Yeah.
Connect with them. I don't know if the Citizens for Responsible Growth is still kind of active in Centerville. That's kind of an older group.
I don't know, they usually put stuff out around election time
Oh, they
here and
do.
there, but
And then
not
we have a Zone
ton.
Centerville Right group.
That one, same thing.
So Zone Centerville, right?
Zone Centerville Right, Friends and
Friends of-
Family of Centerville City, and then Citizens for,
Centerville Friends and Family or something.
yeah, Centerville Friends and Family, and then Centerville Citizens for Responsible
Growth.
Growth.
I would say that we start probably at the one that has the biggest reach,
That's
but,
probably the Centerville Friends, right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the biggest reach. And then we have in Centerville City, our recreation director is also our
Yeah, he does a good job.
public affairs media individual.
Okay.
And so Bryce is fairly new. He comes from Hurricane, operated their, public face, and he's in charge of our website and so forth. So connecting through on Bryce would be a good resource.
And he does
great.
Facebook, he's active on Facebook there too, so.
He already put it on Instagram.
Yeah, Bryce was here
We were here last week.
Yeah, for the city council. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Gotcha.
He put it on Facebook as well already, so, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
I think that's what we'd ask for you guys is get the word out as much as you can, and then put your planning commission hat on, look at the purpose and need, did we get it right from your perspective? Are we missing something? I think that's very valuable information for us, so.
Yeah.
Your citizen's hat, and then put your planning commission hat on, and making sure that we're looking at the right things, that we're looking at a crossing that you think that needs to be, if one doesn't exist today and you think should be one today, put it on the map.
So I have a question, this is probably just stupid, but when you go on there, do you take any kind of suggestions? You just take on just mainly the corridor, or do you take like new off-ramps, or any kind of?
Any kind.
Any
So
kind of information.
last night, I was in Farmington, and they're going to make a comment about a solution on West Davis. They're going to make it very formal, put it in a memo format or a letter format and send it to us. So they're taking the opportunity to expand the boundaries of it a little bit, but any comment's good. It'll go to the right place.
I will say this, I was part of the little walking group that, last fall, that walked over, we started at America First Credit Union, walked across the freeway to Maverick, and then walked back. And it's funny because despite having lived in Centerville since 1989, that was literally the first time I'd ever walked
That stretch.
that stretch.
Yeah.
And I, felt a little bit funny about it, but yeah, I've always just driven it. And it was an eye-opening experience to walk over there and walk that and do that. And, I mean, to be honest with you, if you haven't done it, go do it.
I'm too afraid.
Well, and it's the same with bikes too.
My husband will bike it all the time. He'll bike from the house, he'll go over to the Legacy. It's no big deal to him. But
No.
he rides the Lotoja race, so cars are not a big deal to him. He's been hit. It's not a big deal, but to me, it's terrifying. Right? I'm not gonna do it, and I'm not gonna do it with my
Well,
5-year-old
and
either.
as a cyclist, I go all the way down to Pages, because I'm like, I'm not even touching
Yeah.
Parrish. I wouldn't even
No,
try that.
no.
Yeah, well, some cyclists just take a traffic lane and do that.
Yeah,
some-
that's what
And
I'm
you see
saying. But
some
I'm
that
not
get off
brave
on the
enough to do
sidewalk.
that.
I'm not
Yeah.
brave enough to
No,
do that either.
I mean, it's not good either way.
There's one, the northbound on-ramp, once you get across that, it's fine. That is the one place that it is
Yeah.
a bit.
And they did fix the signal, the pedestrian signal. It's now pointing in the right
They
direction.
better have. That was like, you put, 10 UDOT people through there, and every one of them like, hey, that's broken, hey, that's broken.
I think that is a great idea to get out and walk it. I know there's a couple spots.
I learned a lot.
Yeah, both of us were like, man, I thought I knew this spot pretty good, but when we walked it, just like you're saying, it was super helpful to get perspective, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
The biggest takeaway for me was, from that, honestly, and we had that meeting a week or so after that, or whatever it was, and I think I put this on the map at the time,
Yeah.
but decouple the pedestrian crossing from Parish Lane. Move it over to like Second North, just get it out of there altogether, and that'll help both pedestrians and the vehicles. Everybody wins. But, yeah, if you haven't walked it, go walk it. Maybe don't take your
Put on
stroller.
flashers and a big
Yeah,
orange
put on
vest.
flashers,
Like,
your high-vis vest,
Yes.
whatever, yeah, go do it.
If
But-
you don't have one, give me a call.
Yeah. That idea also, yeah, maybe walking the intersections that are off those interchanges too, just getting out and seeing how those function. Because this is such a high traffic spot you have here, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's one place that is sort of untouchable in the entire 16 miles, and it's Parish. It's Chick-fil-A and it's In-N-Out. You cannot touch those two things. Those are the golden goose of this county.
You can touch them. If you need to do it, you need to do it.
Yeah. If somehow it results in more stacking for each, then yeah, right? Just kidding. Anyway, any other questions for these guys? Any other comments?
Yeah, if something else comes up, feel free to call us,
Yep.
send us an email anytime. Happy to come back.
If people make a comment on the website, just like type it in, is everything public?
Are those public comments?
So the mapping tool we have on there, that's kind of the fun thing about that one, is that you can see all those other spots on there. So sometimes it's helpful to see if other people are saying that same thing. It kind of gets some energy going around thoughts and ideas that way. as far as emails being sent in, you wouldn't be able to see everybody's email at the time they're sending it in. Once we do get all those in, though,
All
we
be
share all
public,
that
yeah.
information back. Sometimes that also is another thing that happens. People kind of look at NEPA as this, a chance to vote, and it's not a vote. So, sometimes have a group that'll say, send it to all their constituency, hey, everybody send this email. Well, if they all send the exact same email and they all say the exact same thing, it's basically a comment. So if you have 50 people and they all have a different way of looking at the problem and different ideas to solve the problem, that's way more helpful. I mean, to get different ways of looking at the problem and how to solve it, but sometimes that happens, but.
So maybe here's a little bit of a pessimistic view to the whole thing.
Yeah.
How much of the public comments actually contribute to the process, or how much of this is UDOT's got their high-paid engineers that have been sitting around looking at it, and they've already kind of got the thing figured out, and this is just going through the motion?
This law, NEPA as a law, that's what it was designed for, is to prevent that kind of stuff from happening. So my experience, I've done this for a long time, and I've helped federal agencies all over the country with NEPA and public engagement. I've seen a ton of things where maybe the engineers or the state or the Fed went into a project kind of thinking, hey, it'll probably end up being A, and it ends up being R. Something that no one even thought of, but people who live there or travel there or whatever came forward with other ideas that no one had even thought of. That happens all the time. And so the law is really designed to make sure that opportunity happens.
The law doesn't say you shall take these comments and implement them, right?
Right.
It says you'll take these comments and you'll respond to them. But oftentimes, if they can get incorporated, they'll get incorporated.
Yeah.
Yeah. We learn a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah. And sometimes maybe it isn't even directly reflected in exactly that study, but it's a whole bunch of feedback that helps inform something else the city or the state or whatever wants to do.
I've seen comments, this bus stop's in the wrong location on a UDOT project. That comment gets moved over to UTA and they fix it.
Yep.
So, we listen.
With what is on the map right now, I know there's no lines drawn. Is it showing as it is right now, or does it show the West Davis corridor? Like, does it show stuff for people? Because that kind of could change some of the comments. People, say, oh, I want something here, but that's not even possible because we've got stuff happening.
It
In the
doesn't
works.
show West Davis
Yeah,
on
it
it.
doesn't show West Davis, but that's a really good idea,
It is.
though. So,
Even if it said like future,
Yeah.
because I
This
know that
area's
like
shaded out or grayed out or whatever.
with like the frontage road down there, obviously there's lots going on and it's prepping to do, that connected part of West Davis, but that could then like preempt some of the decisions or some of the comments where people are like, oh, it'd be really nice to have something right here when it's not even possible.
that's a great idea. That, if anything, we could make that, when we do the alternatives
Like
and
a
come
layer
back to
even.
the-
A
yeah, the
layer on
next-
top would be great, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Idea. You can go home now.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'll for sure pass that forward, that's a great idea. Yeah.
Chair Daly, I just have one mystery question to just,
Sure, go ahead.
since they're not directly involved, maybe they'll give me the real answer. On the pedestrian crossings, when I push the button, is it a placebo effect for me or does it work?
Really works.
It really does.
It really does.
If you push it 50 times,
It
it'll go
works
faster.
less.
No, my question is, this is the real question, is how many smart lights do we have? And is it based on the weight of the car, your flashing of your lights, where it happened, like how is that?
Weight, nothing. Flashing lights, nothing. It detects when a car drives up. It's not a weight thing, it's
It's under, is it
from the
motion?
top. It's a
Is it
motion
from
thing.
the one coming to you or right above you?
It depends. There's one on the side that usually gets you from, not gets you, but it recognizes a car from further back. There's one on the near side that recognizes someone at the stop bar, but it's detected optically and not.
And it's not every light.
It's almost every light. If it's a UDOT light, it's probably detected somehow,
Okay.
whether it's a loop in the ground or whether it's visual, whatever, they're mostly there. If they're not working, If it doesn't detect you, it's probably just not working.
What's a loop in the ground? What does that mean?
Sometimes you'll see like a square that's right below a lane.
Like
right
cut
below.
into
Looks
the
like a saw
asphalt.
cut into the asphalt.
Yep, so there's a lane, there's a loop down there that detects metal above it.
And that one is different than the,
It does the same thing, but it just detects it differently.
what about, sorry, since we're here.
All questions everybody has.
This is a nightly conversation at my house.
Lights don't have those sensors.
Non-UDOT lights don't have them, yeah, unless,
Typically,
yeah, yeah.
they might, but.
What about, like, UDOT lights, I recognize like a schedule, obviously, like it will maybe recognize traffic patterns, and so they'll create a little bit longer lights on certain times, or they'll allow more frequent lights or something like that.
Or in sequence as you go
Or in
ahead and-
sequence. How is that decision made, whether it's a longer light or more frequent?
So they collect a ton of data at any given intersection. And they'll know that during this hour block, you need more green time in this direction versus that direction. So they will allow the signal to go to a maximum of whatever that number is to clear out the intersection as much as possible. But if no one comes, then it detects the other direction and it stops.
Okay.
So they put a maximum on it. Sometimes there's a minimum on it. If you go into a light at, say you're on State Street at 2 a.m, you're gonna get a green light 99% of the
Yeah.
time. But if you pull up on a side street, it should change
Pretty
really,
quick.
really quick. Yep.
Are you accepting comments on those?
Sure.
Commissioner Wright,
As long as they're in Utah.
your license plate's tagged in their system, so they know when you're around, and it just says delay, delay, delay.
Not yet.
The magic.
I can just see our team now. Hey, we got another comment from Slayton and Becky, right?
Yeah.
How far do your lights go on Parish? Is Parish all UDOT?
UDOT.
Yeah, all the way up to Main Street.
All to Main
think it's
Street,
to
that's
Main
all
Street.
UDOT?
Main Street to Legacy.
And then Main Street is.
Main Street is all UDOT.
Also UDOT, so,
Except for the light at Pages. We maintain the light at Pages.
okay.
At Pages? At Pages and Fourth East, we do.
Is it Fourth East?
I think
Okay, you're
Pages and
right.
Fourth East
You're
is
right.
the only non-UDOT light in
You're right,
Centerville.
you're right.
The rest of them are all UDOT.
What about the light, like any kind of lights from off-ramps and interchanges, those are all gonna be yours? Okay. I have some good ideas.
Put it on the map.
Yeah, we got this map. that
Brace
has-
yourselves.
And that's where that map tool is cool on the website.
Yeah.
You can drag it, drop it, and type right specific to a location.
We're gonna have to,
Yeah.
shrink the
We
the
will
geographic
now.
boundaries a little bit, I think.
Are there different types, can you identify different types of comments, like, or is it just a text box for this location?
No, it actually has different icons for your different
Type.
categories.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Can I make a couple comments? First of all, it's Dan.
Yep, Dan.
What's your last name for the
Adams,
record?
ADAMS.
Thank you. Second actual comment is, I tried to type one comment in, and the allowable text isn't very long.
Oh, on the
So,
GIS tool?
Yeah, can that be expanded?
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Thanks.
Like, I'm not to get into your comment, but how long are we talking? Like, I mean, no, I'm
I was
serious.
going for 3 sentences, and they limited
it's
me
like-
to
okay.
2.
So it's like Twitter,
Oh, that's
man, you
good.
gotta get
It's
it.
144 characters.
Yeah.
Done.
I wasn't writing a novel. So.
No, okay. yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
We'll go and, yeah, we can go play with that too.
Last question about the maps. Is it just I mean, we talked about maybe the layers of the potential thing, but are there layers that you can turn on and off that show like trail systems
No,
or,
Not on this one.
okay.
No.
Does it
There
address
will be
bike
one.
routes at all, or just vehicles?
Sorry?
Does it address bicycle routes?
It will, both.
Yeah.
It does,
yeah.
okay.
You could, yeah, the comments were open to either one of
Okay.
those comments, yeah. We want to know, if you're a biker, where are you going?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we want to accommodate that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yep. Okay, thanks,
you all.
y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the conversation, that was great.
Good.
Made all of it up.
Corey, for the record, that button on the elevator to open the doors, that's a dummy.
Yeah,
That's a
that one.
placator? That's a placator, okay.
The close the door one is for sure a dummy.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
was in Sa-
psychological.
I was in San Diego, and it just kept saying, wait, wait, wait.
Because the San Diego lights are terrible, actually.
Okay, let's move on then. We've got a few more things to talk about. The next item on the agenda, oh, yeah. See, Mackenzie, it doesn't show it on this cover sheet either, so.
Okay.
This is a, scheduled for a public hearing.
Yes.
This is a zoning code amendment to talk about water-efficient landscaping. And first of all, I'd like to say, this is a quick turnaround, Corey. I mean, I think it was only 3 weeks ago that we heard about this, right? So,
Yeah, I think there's pressure from above.
so Corey, go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Daly. Mackenzie, the staff report, and we can just go to the red section at the end of the report. Just as a backup for clarity, because this is something that has been passed around in some emails, the city needs to quit requiring turf. And just so you know, for clarity, our current ordinance for residential, single-family lot development areas, we have no requirements for landscaping. You technically could leave it in dirt as long as you keep your weeds below 12 inches. Now, that's not to say that you may not buy into a development that initially has its own covenants that says you have to get something done within 18 months or whatever they may say. They may say, you know, you have some turf requirements in those covenants if there are any. And obviously, the state is looking at their bills to change those kind of allowances for municipalities and HOAs and so forth. So, but just for clarity, we do not require turf in the city. As for commercial and industrial development, we do not require turf. It is 75% plantings for your landscaping area at maturity. Now, that's something, yeah, coverage, and I think that's something we can talk about and probably will eventually talk about as we get into further discussions about water conservation and so forth. So I just wanted a clarity that Centerville ordinances, if you look at it, it actually encourages the drought-tolerant plantings and does not require turf. Now, is turf been the easiest thing to put in the past to get that coverage? Absolutely. And so it's a quick and easy way for developments to put in, you know, turf and so forth. So we do have a place in the city. But just clarity, no mandatory requirements, but no prohibited requirements either for the use of turf. For artificial turf, if you look at our artificial landscaping ordinance, which I think is the craziest and best crazy of the state for an ordinance in response to palm trees. We did, in that ordinance, restrict artificial turf to no more than 10% of any landscape plan. So,
In any zone?
in any zone,
Front or back?
front or back of your whole lot. So there is,
10% of the landscaped area or 10% of the entire parcel?
Site.
of the landscape plan, landscaped area. So there is a citizen movement to maybe change that ordinance, and been in contact to some members of the council, so you may see something about artificial turf.
I was gonna say, because I can think of 2 homes that may be out of compliance with that.
Only 2?
Well, and one of them has a 50-yard line.
I know one with a putting green in the backyard, that's pretty big.
Yeah.
Artificial turf is hard because it really heats things up.
It's hot.
It's hot.
Yeah, and
And
it's,
so
all you know, what do you use as your weight base, you know? Is it black granules that they typically use? Is it a white sand that you put in? Also, the issue of artificial turf, particularly on hillside, so if you don't put the right underlayment underneath, you have the drainage problems because it will create more surface runoff if it's not installed correctly. So we're gonna have that, I anticipate we'll have that debate fairly soon somewhere. But just wanted to set that up so that you have some common questions of what the city actually does and doesn't require when it comes to turf. And obviously, we can have further discussion. But tonight's ordinance is driven from the top down in response to Weaver Basin's Flip Your Strip program. And there's been a lot of dialogue between staff and Weaver Basin in the past. What is Flip Your Strip? The basics of the Flip the Strip program is that you have to have existing turf, so it's not counting for new plantings, so I understand. You have to have existing turf in your park strip. You remove that, you put in your drip irrigation, put in your plantings, meet their specifications, and you can be reimbursed for your cost for flipping a strip from turf. I think the misnomer out there is their plan doesn't really expressly say, just fill it up with a bunch of gravel and you're good to go. However, I've heard rumors, third and fourth party, that folks have just put a layer of gravel in and Weber Basin's accepted it. So I don't know the reality of their program and when they're going out and saying, you qualify for the reimbursement. But if you really look at their requirements, it's probably going to cost you more to rip your strip and meet the supposed requirements than the amount that you're going to get into return, unless they just go ahead and reimburse you for gravel, which is a rumor. I don't know for factual on that.
So is it a percentage? They'll reimburse a percentage of it, or how do they?
I think it's
$1.50 per square foot.
yeah, $1.50.
Gotcha.
So for a 50 by 4 foot park strip, you get $200. It's gonna cost you a lot more to complete.
And I don't think
And you
that-
have to put a drip system.
I don't think that the purpose of the flip your strip is to completely pay for the
No.
whole thing. It's to
I think that's the misnomer.
offset.
Softens the blow.
It's an
Offset,
incentive, right?
yeah.
It's an incentive.
So-
However, some folks are in the rumor mill saying, hey, I just put gravel in and they went ahead and approved me. So
Yeah.
I don't know how aggressive they're inspecting and checking and looking at your smart controllers. I've also heard in rumor that I've had a smart controller in for a year now and still haven't received reimbursement. So their program is in its beginnings, trying to figure itself out along the way. But the step that has been taken is not just focusing on the park strip. Weber Basin has a policy that you have to be a qualifying city. And now their requirements for qualifying city is it's not just about the park strip. They have a model ordinances from several different cities that talk about the design parameters. And if you adopt something of that nature and they accept it, you become a qualifying city. So they're stepping past the flip your strip and they're stepping into the private sector or the private area of the yard and saying, cities, we need you to do some ordinance changes. And they want you to do it for residential, commercial, and industrial. And that's where the long discussions for the past 3 months have taken place between the city staff and Weber Basin staff, is that for Centerville City, Weber Basin only serves basically from Chase Lane north. So they actually don't provide water as their district to the commercial and industrial areas. But they're still saying you have to adopt commercial industrial. Now, that's oversimplification because Dual Creek does serve in our commercial districts in south of Chase Lane, and they buy wholesale water from Weber Basin. So, but I don't know what Dual Creek is planning. I have not heard a policy statement from Dual Creek on what they're planning to do.
And we're sure that Weber Basin, okay, so I live in the Dual Creek area. I have to go through Dual Creek in order to do this, assuming that they participate in it. I can't directly go to Weber
Well,
Basin.
from what I understand is it's really the Flip Your Strip is that third-party site. And Weber Basin is participating in that.
Your strip is run by Utah Water Savers.
Yeah.
Not a Weber Basin district or.
Weber Basin is just saying that we're running we're supporting the strip program there, but here's our requirements to be a qualifying city to be a part of that program.
Okay, so those of us who live in the Dual Creek area can
I
participate?
think so.
You think so? Okay.
I haven't talked to Utah Water Savers, but
Yeah, the question becomes is who's what okaying it so that you get the reimbursement. And I think that's a little gray with Dual Creek from my perspective. Maybe they have a program, but I'm just not aware of it.
Well, I mean.
But they're under Weber Basin.
they're under Weber Basin. And when you read Weber Basin's qualifications, it's city, not watering district or
Yes, that is
watering.
correct.
And so I interpret that to mean Centerville City as a whole, regardless if it's Dual Creek or Weber Basin. But I haven't confirmed that with anyone.
Okay.
So that comes down to the debate on where Centerville should sit if we want to qualify for a participating program. And I think this is where the policy issue, particularly as you make a recommendation and it gets bumped to the council, given whatever expectations this Flip the Strip program has, that we need to get to be a qualifying city, is that have the value enough to be a qualifying city so that residents can participate in it? Is it too much from a policy perspective and we fund our own program? Or is it too much from our perspective and we just say, you're on your own to conserve water? And I think we all agree that conservation of water is important, but where I think at a staff level discussion, particularly with the city manager, is that we are concerned at our level about making mandatory requirements. Because once you make a city mandatory requirement, twofold come into play. It's our ordinance that we have to manage, in spite of whatever the Flip the Strip program is. Because remember, they're just focusing on the reimbursement of the park strip. Now we're going into the other areas of landscaping. It becomes our ordinance, and the question becomes, do we want to go mandatory? Do we want to regulate landscaping plans for single-family development? Are we going to require a permit for your landscape?
It's a big job.
Are we going to inspect your sprinkling system, that you're in compliance? Are we on your honor and just wait for a complaint? So when one neighbor does it right and the next neighbor doesn't do it right, we get to go to the state website, rat your neighbor out or whatever it's called. Shame your neighbor, sorry, I think it's.
Shameyourneighbor.gov? Great.
Well, but on the flip side of that, I mean, the fact that we have zero requirement for any kind of landscaping, I know personally, there was a home in my old neighborhood that just was brand new, nice home. It just didn't put in landscaping and it became weeds and stuff for a while. And people were like, what can we do? How can we help? How can we prevent this brand new neighborhood have this kind of
Yeah,
problem?
funky going on.
Yeah.
And that's the issue is we could install a minimum landscaping. You have to have your landscaping in with 18 months or whatever. But we don't pick the design. We don't pick
Yeah.
the sprinkler system. We don't pick whether, we're still allowing you to pick it. You just have to do it by a certain period of time and then maintain it. The concern for adopting an ordinance that is very mandatory and expressive, it becomes an enforcement policy issue and a funding issue and a fairness issue. And then the tolerance of the community is always a big factor. What is the community really willing to tolerate just to participate? And I'm sounding horrible, just to participate in Flip Your Strip. We're going to really strong arm everything
How
over
many other
here.
communities don't have any sort of landscaping requirement?
I wouldn't know that answer.
Well, here's the thing, I think we missed the boat on that one, because Centerville's pretty well built out, other than that symphony development going in. And by the time we talk about all those things and get it all figured out, and run it through the city council, symphony's gonna be done, what's left? I think we missed the boat on being prescriptive like
Yeah, I
that.
mean, you're still gonna have a road property here and there that'll just not maintain anything. Let's say they developed a broken pipe in their sprinkler system, they might just shut it off and say,
Yeah.
never mind, and just not irrigate all summer, and then it's just weeds,
And
That can happen.
You do have, I mean, we're never gonna build up east of Main Street, but is that the case? Is that something that we know for sure? I don't know. There's still land up
There's still some.
Jennings
little
Lane.
pockets.
Jennings Lane area right there. I mean, there's definitely some space.
There is, and this is where kind of the middle-of-the-road planner view of having worked in the city a long time and having to do, me and McKinsey, having to do the code enforcement and drag Lisa in every once in a while.
But how much would it be code enforcement if we really don't have that many?
Right, but but it's the issue of somebody now landscapes and they have to change it. Do they go through a site plan amendment process so we can check
Is there a
it?
way to really just make it so much simpler, but just?
Well, that's where I'm kind of leading up to the issue is I think there will be some social pressures outside of the city just being explicit and mandatory in an ordinance. We're gonna lose a lot of lawns if we're down to 1 week, 1 day a week. I know we talk about the crown and keeping it alive and dormant, but if you look at the soils underneath in certain areas, particularly the sandy soils, Ford Canyon, it's a great view lot. It's junk property when it comes to the land underneath, because it's all just a debris flow. You're not gonna keep the moisture in the crown of the lawn, and it's going. So I think just the idea, if we cut back watering, people are going to naturally try to gravitate to something other than turf and do something better. The question becomes, how much is that investment? You know, if it's the expensive rock landscaping and gravel and so forth, yeah, I mean, I put into my yard, just to be too personal, as I always am, I mean, I put $30,000 into a 6,000 square foot lot using decorative gravel and minimal turf.
Well, see, that's why I kind of like this idea of, this is an optional program that we're going to put in place and let the citizens decide what's best for them. Because, to your point, the soil composition of the city is varied from the west side up to the east side. I know I live up on what was once upon a time a gravel pit, in a way. It's all sand. My lawn would be just scorched dead if I only watered it once a week. Well, one of the things that we've done to try and be water conscious is convert as much as we could from a sprinkler to a drip system, you know, and do a lot of that. And I feel like that's a good way for us to take an approach of being being conscious, but that's not going to fit for everybody, you know. So I like this approach because here's something very minimal, but the city residents can decide whether they want to participate in it or not.
Right, and what we've done is we found Layton and Kaysville adopted a highly recommended system. And so I just mimicked, not exactly their verbatim, but the standards that are being placed throughout their ordinances. I just created a brand-new section in our landscaping ordinance that says water-wise or water efficient, because I think there's two names out there. Weaver Basin's using water efficient, and the state code uses water-wise. But they're all the same thing.
Are we in discussion now, or is this a public?
Well, we're still asking Cory questions.
Yeah, I'm just trying to set up
I
why,
have a lot to say, I just want to know when it's my turn.
I'm just trying to set up why we went.
I've been asking questions, sorry.
Why we went to this scheme of highly recommended. We found 2 cities that adopted the highly recommended section. I took those kind of elements that are spaced out in their commercial landscaping and just plugged it into one section under landscaping. We don't require turf, so that's not something we have to worry about because we're not being mandatory on turf. We'll put in the water-wise section, do it as a highly recommended. We meet the qualifying matters of the flip your strip early in the season here now, even though we're getting later. If we get that up to the council, they agree with this highly recommended. We have a water conservation discussion with the council next Tuesday because we have concerns about turning to culinary water with it. And so I do think we will have further amendments with 75% and reducing that amount so that you can have more decorative gravel as part of it and not have so many plantings because that can also use quite a bit of water. But I think we'll have some other changes, but to get this through, because the council really wanted to have something in place to help flip your strip, even though I think it's kind of miscommunicated exactly what it means out there. We can be a qualifying city. It gets them to start moving that direction, and so that's why it's proposed as a highly recommended. And so that's really it.
Thank you.
So Cory, let me ask you a question. In your proposed language here, on the 3rd line down, it talks about how, right there, right in the middle up, says the city prohibits the use of culinary water to water landscaped areas, and all landscaped areas shall be watered with secondary irrigation. There are areas of the city, residential areas of the city, that don't have secondary water, right?
I think there is an island area that doesn't have it, if I recall right, and the west side doesn't have it.
Right, so I think
So does the city currently do that, or is this an addition?
Well, this is, do we have
This,
that? in-
we do not have, what we have in our ordinances is, and this is where we're beginning that kind of concern of discussion about use of our culinary water. Currently, if you are in a secondary area, you have to have shares,
Yep.
but our only restriction is you can't use our culinary for irrigation between 6 PM and 10 AM. Otherwise, you can use it.
So I can take the blame for this provision. I did add that in, so thanks for trying to. So as Corey just mentioned accurately, we have run into this problem where people are in an area that has irrigation water. They're hooked up to Dual Creek, but they unhook that and they go ahead and just use culinary water. Or they never use their shares, they just use culinary water.
Or they put a
And
jumper on,
So, yeah.
their
water
system is
department,
inefficient.
you know, goes to the enforcement issue or the city attorney, and, you know, in reviewing our ordinances, I said, I can't find anything, it just says in our, like, our subdivision ordinance or our zoning code that they have to have the shares and, you know, hook it up, but it doesn't really have any teeth. So I did admit in some email correspondence that I'm trying to address this, and that's why it says, unless otherwise provided, and so we do have some exceptions. So on the, well, if this only applies to residential, but on the west side, we don't have irrigation, so we only require 10% landscaping, and we also encourage water efficient landscaping, and then also these areas in the city where you don't have secondary. And so I was thinking about, I would like to address this more fully with other amendments, but I would like to get it in here, at least for this type of landscaping, that to state it affirmatively that it has to be watered. Not only do you have to have the shares, but it has to be watered with the irrigation.
So I guess that was part of my question, is that unless otherwise provided,
Yeah.
is that sufficient to cover a scenario where secondary water is not available to them? You know,
Yes, that's the intent, and I was trying to think if I put something else.
I left out of town, so I only put your first set of edits in. I don't know if I got your second set. If you had one.
Yeah, okay, no, yeah. Where I would revise is in Title IX, we really need to make some additional revisions, but this would give us something to look at, and in my opinion, unless otherwise provided,
okay.
covers us.
Well, that's fine, because where that came from is, you know, there was a time many years ago when I was walking the streets of the city, talking about city issues with people, and I discovered, or somebody told me at least, that the neighborhood directly east of Jenny P. Stewart apparently doesn't have secondary water.
There are, I'm aware that there's a small section of the city that doesn't.
Yeah, a little pocket or something like that, but I just don't want them to be,
Yeah, like you could even add a sentence that says, you know, unless otherwise provided, including or such as areas not serviced by a secondary water company.
I like that.
I like that too.
Okay. And while we're talking about that, before we go into the public hearing, I did also suggest an edit, Mackenzie, that is in subsection 3E, to put in, when you have this 3 to 4 inches of rock or mulch, that you put in a weed block fabric. But since that edit, I did go and read a lot of the information on the WaterWise Utah, and they do not recommend that. It really damages the soil and takes out the nutrients from the plants and things like that. So I am suggesting that you take out in subsection 3E and appropriate weed block fabric. So it would just say a depth of 3 to 4 inches to prevent weed growth.
Okay.
And they can still put the weed block fabric if they want.
If they want to,
It's not
but,
required, yeah, it's not recommended.
not recommended.
I didn't realize, but it's not.
okay. Sounds good. Any other questions for staff?
So what is recommended there?
Just, if you have to have 3 to
Pulling
4
the weeds.
inches of whatever material you have, and they say that is better, and most of us don't. I mean, I've tried, but 2 inches looks like a lot. And
That's pretty deep.
and you're doubling your costs, so anyway, you really have to go to the recommended,
And
They're saying that 3 to 4 inches is enough to keep the weeds down.
yes, that's
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
Chair Daly, just so that everybody is aware, we do have a park strip ordinance existing, and that was recently amended and should still qualify under the flip your strip, but we're a little more restrictive. We do not allow the use of bark in the park strips. You have to use
I was gonna
1 inch plus rock in the park strips. We want pea gravel and bark going down the storm drain. And we brought that up with Weber Basin recently, and they said, oh, we didn't think about that, that's.
So it will
no
be-
wood chip types of any type, right? It just
Right.
has to be rock.
And it will be an education process because our citizens will be going
Wanting
to
to do
the
that.
Waterwise, and then they recommend these materials that are not allowed in Centerville due to the storm drain issue or, you know.
Can we put something in there that talks about due to storm drain issues? Because I
Well, I
think,
tried to reference that in the park strip section of,
Is that the
Yeah, we do have that
CMC,
language.
CMC 110220 on C?
3C.
Yeah, 3C.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the wood chips would be less expensive and people would try to do that, you know.
well, and sometimes people think it looks prettier too, so I feel like, I wonder if they're not just referencing CMC, but actually, stating it here, is that,
Well, we were talking about putting it on the website or something like that, or highlighting it in materials, but again, this ordinance is to allow our citizens to be eligible for a third-party program. And I think we need to be careful to understand, we're not running that program, we don't want to enforce that program, so we're just trying to draft an ordinance that makes it permissive for them to apply for that program.
well, and I
I
agree with
would-
you, but I would, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I would just also say, we're also trying to encourage, we're not just, yeah, we want them to be able to, work for this program, but what's the genesis as well? The genesis is that we want them to also conserve water.
Yes, and
So-
so staff's point is, well, my position is, I would like to have more time to work on an ordinance. We're not making it mandatory at this time from a city standpoint. I'm not saying we shouldn't get there, but in 2 weeks, we're not going to get there. And our citizens want to apply for this program.
Immediately.
And this is what I'm saying is we need to do what's right for Centerville and our streets and our 4-foot park strips and our public works department, whether that gets people $1.50 a square foot incentive or not, let's do the right thing, which is saving water and reducing storm drain problems and those sorts of things. But that's going to take a much longer, more comprehensive research at it.
So you're saying, though, that this ordinance isn't what you would like to do, but this is good enough to get us qualified for the program?
We think it is, based on their
We think
model
it is.
ordinance.
But,
And it's reasonable, it is encouragement, and
I was
that's what we
gonna
want to do, but
Yeah.
again, realize we haven't been in the business of regulating any kind of landscaping in the front yard of single-family homes. And so that's a huge policy decision to say, okay, are we now going to mandate a certain percentage of, water-efficient landscaping? And that's where I think we have to have a much broader debate. But this allows people to do it if they want, and
Which-
apply for the program.
Step one, maybe there's a step two later after
Yes.
5 more years of drought.
Exactly. But yes, we really, if we really want to embrace this kind of landscaping like we have on the west side.
Yes.
I think we have some really good examples over there, but let's think about it and let's make it practical so that people can successfully implement it.
but in your mind, though, the phrase keeps coming up in my brain, perfection is the enemy to progress. So are you wanting to actually stop this and wanting to
No.
go to do something better?
No, I'm just,
Okay.
no, I think this is great.
Okay,
And
so this is the
Accomplishes
process.
what we want, and
Moving
it
the needle.
I think it checks all the boxes, other than saying, in some ways, we're not going far enough, or whatever side of the,
Yeah,
you are, but we're not mandating it
right.
yet.
Commissioner, if I go back to your question I sense that you want some language that will be friendly if they go to this section and not have to look up 14 different codes.
Yeah, I just want that, if this is something that we're putting in, even though it's not perfect and it's the first step, can we just add in just like a sentence that
And-
talks
and-
about
And I
why.
I think so. Just the logic on the structure.
Yeah.
Is that if you repeat codes that are similar around and then you amend one and then you
Yeah,
Forget to amend the
mess
other.
up, that's the reason. But could we, given this non-mandatory requirement? Sure, I think we could.
and especially in, I think it would be, I don't think repeating code is always a good idea, but in a sense where there could be some confusion based on what they're seeing here and based
No,
on what
I
they're trying
see
to
your
do,
point.
that's why I think there might be some benefit.
So you're saying that under C, 3C, instead of just referencing the code, or in addition to referencing to?
In addition to,
Yeah, see, my only hangup with that is then if we make an edit, we've got to edit it two places, right? Instead of just editing it in 1102.020 and then letting that be the place.
yeah, I understand that.
So, I don't
Yeah.
know.
So the key here is it uses the word should install alternative planning. No, so that's the part that's not mandatory, it's encouraged. Right? Is
Well,
that-
I
that's the
think what we
intent
want to
there?
say is, we're encouraging you to use alternative plantings, but maybe we also say, and you're also subject to the restrictions of this. I mean, that's the point is.
Yeah, and I see Commissioner
Whether it's-
Wright's point of view is, who's going to go research 5 reference codes? They want more simple places. Oh, if you're doing something different than the Flip Your Strip program, let me see it quickly and easy without having to.
I mean, if our whole impetus for this is because of the Rip Your Strip, and this number C directly
Gives
is
you a
in
big question
conflict
mark.
with what the Rip Your Strip is, that to me seems like we are creating some systems, some processes that will cause citizens frustration, that will ultimately make them not in compliance with this type of thing, unless we just say one little sentence that talks about storm drain or something, you know, like, that doesn't seem like it's that hard.
Well, it really should say, park strips less than 8 feet in width are limited to using alternative planting and materials under 11.2.020.
There you go. That's a
Well,
little bit more.
Even though this is all permissive, that 11.2.020 is
It's
actually
actually
mandatory.
restrictive, yeah. I agree with that.
So, Lisa, is our code online are there not hyperlinks on there? Can we not hyperlink that 11.020?
We have not hyperlinked, it's certainly possible.
I suggest we change
Saying
that.
it'd be a first.
No, I mean, it just would be a lot, there's a lot of internal references in our municipal code, and it was suggested when we converted it, and, you know, we could commit to that. I mean,
Could
let me
we,
just search CMC, and let me tell you how many internal code citations there are.
Could we recruit an unpaid intern to go and do that or something?
How about this? Why don't we, again, not try to get perfection? Let's start right here. Let's make the decision right here. Let's fix it so it actually says are required, like our code requires them.
Yeah,
And then just put a hyperlink right there. I feel
Well, in our
like,
municipal code, there's 204, it would require 204 hyperlinks.
Oh, that'd
And I
take
don't know
a,
about our zoning
well,
code.
this only
I mean, that's
requires
doable.
one, though, is what I'm saying.
that would take a
Let's just start
tech-savvy
here.
high school student about 2 days.
Yeah, I think C should just
I
change
don't
it.
even know if it would be too, I mean, you just have to highlight it, click link,
Yeah.
I don't even, yeah.
So what do we want C to say then?
Back to what Lisa said, as
Yeah.
far as that the alternative plantings can be found at this code if you use.
That are required to install, not should, right? You said something like are required to.
Are required to,
Comply
I would
with-
prefer that, because that implies that if you want to, you can do those when really you have, you know, if, I mean, maybe let Corey and I just say revise that, because I
Yeah.
don't want, they're
Just wordsmith it.
restricted to the materials, but 11.02.020 does not talk about alternative plantings. It just says you can either do landscaping or hardscaping. And the hardscaping is what we restrict, which is rocks of a certain size, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I guess it would still comply with alternative
I could say, you say
plantings.
alternative plantings and materials, which,
And must also comply with, you know,
so park
I would
strips,
say you guys take care of that.
park strips less than 8 feet in width
I'm
are
waiting for
required to
Commissioner
com-
Care to
are
take care
required
of.
to comply with. Oh, do we have a care amendment?
Oh, he
wants me to, I'm not.
He's not taking the bait.
But I mean, what I'm saying is park strips
Come
less
on, I
than
keep
8
messing it up,
feet,
I'm waiting for you.
8 feet in width are required to comply with alternative plantings and materials as outlined in blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
1102.
yes,
Yeah.
Nailed it.
or, yeah.
Are required to, that's what you said.
All required to,
Required to.
because then that's gonna give somebody, they're
A
gonna say,
little
oh,
bit
if
more,
it's,
yes.
instead of should, they're gonna go,
Yes.
oh, they are required to.
I
What's that
feel
saying?
much more comfortable with that, and especially if
Yeah.
we get a hyperlink in there.
But
Done.
they require it,
Done.
we're not requiring it?
Well, we
It's
do
not
require it. We
That's
require-
one area that we have a requirement in another code.
If you're going
Rest
to
of
put
it's all
in certain
shoulds.
materials,
That's where it says you can't use bark. That's where it says you can't.
I'm
use-
just saying, mainly, I'm trying to prevent a bunch of bark in our storm drain. I'm trying to prevent, trying to get people to have to redo the whole thing, spending money, trying to prevent people having to yell at their neighbor. I don't know. Let's solve some problems here, be clear, and
Okay.
be done.
Any other questions?
well, you could also say, park strips less than 8 feet in width should install alternative plantings and materials, subject to the material restrictions set forth in such and such.
So here's,
Then we're not
Defer to you.
requiring.
well, Lisa, here's my only hangup with that. That, as, I'm sure as an attorney, that's the perfect way to say it. But from the layperson's perspective, required seems to be like this word that says, oh, what is that? I gotta go look that up.
Ding, ding, ding.
Well, we want them to look it up.
I know we
That's what he
do. That's what I'm
wants.
saying.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying you don't want to use word required.
He's saying required before
Before, put the,
install.
yeah.
Okay, last comment, then we'll open up the public hearing. My only concern is if you put park strips less than 8 feet, you shall install alternative plantings and materials in 112020. We're just saying if you do want to put these kind of materials, this is what you're limited to. But if you put required earlier, you're saying you have to put in what's in 020.
No, because that's what I,
I agree on that, and that's why that second
was my thought.
sentence, just talking about the materials,
but that's
came
why I
full
said,
circle here.
park strips less than 8 feet in width are required to comply with.
Oh, required to comply with?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Required to comply with
There you-
alternative plantings and materials as outlined in.
Okay, that, yep, now you're good. Sorry, I didn't
Great.
write that part down.
You said that originally.
She come full circle on
Good job,
herself.
Kevin.
Okay,
You got a point.
before we go to the public hearing, though, you were making a mention about essentially like a purpose statement or something. Do you want to do something like that, or?
The intent to reduce water use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking, okay, why are we talking here? What is our goal? We want to help people be able to participate in Rip Your Strip, but also, as a city, we recognize an issue and we want to encourage water efficiency in our city. So
So-
I don't know if that says it enough here, but I'm just thinking, what is the goal, and does this answer that goal?
So, okay, I like the idea of that. One kind of hesitation of that would be, maybe we don't specifically mention Flip Your Strip, because that program may
Yeah, I don't
not
want to do
exist
that
long-term.
either. Yeah.
But, for sure, I think the idea of emphasizing.
Well, we
water-
kind of
that
have
title
that there.
kinda
It may
do that?
not be as noticeable, but your second half of the first sentence, city encourages the use of water efficient plantings, irrigation systems. We could, the city desires and encourages conservation of
I
water
wasn't
through the
saying-
use of,
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that we needed to add anything there. I was just,
Okay.
for a theoretical,
Yeah,
oh, okay.
like, argument, like, what are we doing here? What is the
All right.
purpose? Does this answer the
let's leave it
purpose?
then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, the title is water efficient landscaping. I think
yeah.
that's pretty clear.
All right, let's leave it then. Any other questions for staff before we go to the public hearing?
And then we'll get to the discussion part.
I just want to hear the public.
Then we'll start discussing it. Yeah. Okay. All right, so this matter has been scheduled for a public hearing. We'll take the opportunity now to open up our public hearing and give anybody the opportunity who would like to speak to this proposed ordinance to come forward and do so. And if you would like to step forward, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Joseph. I live on the northern end of Centerville, kind of by Jennings Lane.
Joseph, do you have a last name?
Groberg.
Perfect,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I'm here also representing my wife, and so I'm trying to remember everything she told me to bring up and and say. But I agree with what's been said here and do appreciate the trying to expedite it, the whole flip your strip thing, because that's our concern. We live on a corner lot, so we have a ton of park strip well, it's crap, and so we'd like to get rid of it. But our neighbors right above us, they just ripped theirs out. So to give you an idea of costs, they just ripped theirs out this last weekend and threw in gravel. And obviously it will fluctuate with the type of gravel you get, but I think it was like 50-foot section, and it was over $1,000 to rent the trailer, rip it out, dump it, all that cost, and then the rock to install it with some stuff. So we're looking at like 3 or 4 times that to get our entire corner, and then also our house is on a hill, and so north or south facing, so it's going to be scorched to heck if we can just water once a week. And last year it already took a beating, so we're looking at changing that as well. And so, yeah, any suggestion is just try and figure out if you can throw more money towards it, and we'll take it. And I think that's about it, all I had. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Kind of same thing. My name's Stephanie Richardson. I live on 55 South 200 East, so I'm just a few blocks over. Just ripped out about 1/3 of my back lawn. I'm trying to do more hardscape, water-wise plants. It's really expensive. So yeah, I'm very much in support of this. I tried applying for the program, the Water Savers, a while ago, and they denied me because our city wasn't participating, so I appreciate that. I just have a quick question about water metering. I noticed that the legislature appropriated some funds for putting in water meters, so that we can see what we're using. I would like one, because I want to see how much water I'm using when I'm trying to get all this drip system. I'm really overwhelmed. So I want to see if it's working. I'd like to know how much water I should be using in a week, instead of saying, well, you can water your lawn once a week. Well, I'm getting rid of a lot of lawn, so I don't think I should just be able to water once a week. I want to see how much water I can use and be reasonable. And I'd also like to see, I don't know if you guys are interested in this, but maybe promoting some sort of just community kind of training on how to set up drip systems. There's just not a lot out there. Where I'm trying to figure out how to do it from scratch. My husband has absolutely no interest in the yard, so I'm on my own. So I'm just trying to get advice from anybody I can. So anyway, those are just a couple of suggestions I had.
Thank you. We'll address that question in just a second.
Hi, my name is Scott Zeidler. I reside here in Centerville. I wasn't planning on coming to the meeting. I was coming to walk up to pick up my pickup truck in the parking lot, and I read the notice on the door. But nonetheless, the topic does interest me. I'll disclose I do serve on the City Tree Board for a number of years, and have advised the city on some matters regarding trees, mostly in the park strips. And I have been tracking this water conservation issue as affecting the potential existence of trees within the park strip right now. It is my personal opinion that the width and the physical nature of the soils in our park strips are not conducive to long-term tree health. The way trees are growing, lifting sidewalk panels, migrating under the sidewalk into parts of the front yard where water is more abundant, seems to suggest that the width is not friendly to trees. And I almost think too, there is this zone beyond the back edge of the sidewalk, which is perhaps in the city's right of way for utilities, that might also deserve some consideration for landscape conversion to water efficiency for the same reasons that tree roots lift sidewalk panels in the parking strip, but also trees co-located to the park or the sidewalk on the home side, if close enough, can equally lift the sidewalk panel, cause issues of risk and adherence to ADD policies. So I'm not expressing any of these comments on the position of the tree board, but it's something that I've contemplated. I would hope that if we adopt this, we would not use it as a manner to shame those who do not take advantage of water conservation efforts or do prefer to have turf if they wish to regulate the water use and care of turf. I do not want to see that be a shaming for our fellow citizens and property owners. I attended a workshop this spring down in St. George, and Kelly Kopp of Utah State University Extension presented some interesting facts about turf grass management, of which was this philosophy of watering at night and only at night, and its demand on the pressure of the water systems, and that daytime irrigation might be equally considered for maintaining green and thriving grass. There's also products available that campuses and sports fields have used to try to enhance the uptake and availability of water in the root zone of turf grasses, which I think is also an interesting technological advance to which people may have interest and may want to do equally to conserve water in the appearance of their turf, whether it's bluegrass or other species. I support the things that have been discussed here. I think it does have a relation with trees. I anticipate that those residents who convert their park strips to more water efficient landscapes, and if there's trees already existing, trees will decline. And I would like, and I'm very appreciative, this last week, over the 2 weeks, the city has made available a green waste drop-off at the park. I thought that's a wonderful solution for people to find help for dealing with large tree material. And I anticipate there probably will be large tree material that will end up in a green waste landfill. And I think the city's effort to use the QR code and the Parks Department ability to transport that tree material to the local landfill for green processing is wonderful. So I appreciate everything the city's doing. I think is contemporary to the issues at hand, all natural resources, including waters and what they might mean to fisheries and weirs and drinking water availability. And I think that, wish we had more water, but we don't. And this is a good move in my estimation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I
Okay.
can comment again. If this moves forward, how fast is the council looking at this being approved and citizens being able to actually apply and get approved? In best case scenario or worst case?
Once we close the
Want me to
public.
answer that, or you want to wait?
Well, I think, anybody else want a round two? Okay.
Can I ask questions?
You
Okay.
can. So typically,
Okay, good.
the typical process is to ask the questions and we'll answer them all at the end. But
Oh, okay.
I think we're at the end. So I like this 133% public participation, you know, it's pretty good. So yeah, Corey, go ahead and answer that one. And we'll get back to Ms. Richardson's question as well.
Yeah, tonight's the take for the planning commission to recommend policy. And so depending out on their decision tonight, if this were to move forward tonight, I think the earliest we'd see it is the May 2nd or 3rd
For city council?
for city council.
Yes, that sounds right.
The 3rd is the Tuesday.
That's a Tuesday, so that's the day where we in our minds logistically set it up, but now that's putting peer pressure on this group to decide whether they can make a decision tonight. Which, you know, if we can help me put pressure on the group, I'm not sure I'm
Look, Corey,
against it.
the planning commission, unlike other city bodies, is not prone to punting down the road, so. That's right. Go watch that statement on YouTube. But anyway, well, I think we can get a decision made one way or
Roughly
another.
by 1st of May.
Okay. And then as far as water meters goes, correct me if I'm wrong, Corey, but for those that live in the Dual Creek area, it would be up to Dual Creek irrigation company to decide to use that money to install water meters. And if somebody would optionally like a water meter, you'd have to talk to either Dual Creek or Weber Basin, depending on where they live.
Right, the state has adopted a water metering program under the Senate bill, so you have your secondary water irrigation companies are installing meters. Weber Basin has started installing their meters. To be honest with you, I think it will take a season because there's a high demand for meters and there's not enough supply going on. And so I think it's going to take a while to roll out all the metering. If you're north of Chase Lane, particularly, I know that they are discussing how much water you use. I'm not sure how they're planning to measure it, but they have a tiered system that the first time you get a warning, the second time you get a fine, the third time it's $1,000, the fourth time they turn off your water. Now, without a meter, I don't know their program on how they're adjusting that, but I think that's a good point about the positive side of a meter is to understand how much water you're using, which then leads into the policy decision at these districts. If you're paying for a service, how much service versus how much water you're using, and what's that fair balance? I think that's
So I
a
think
legitimate question.
in this particular case, she lives in Dual Creek area, so she would just need to talk to Dual Creek.
Robert Burns with Dual Creek. And I know Dual Creek is a small company, and so I don't know,
There's only like 2 guys that are
yeah,
running that whole show.
I know that there are some operational issues.
Yeah,
She
sorry.
also asked about information and training and classes or someone to be able to help.
Yeah, the city hasn't actively created that. I think that's something, as we have these further discussions, so we begin a work discussion about water conservation with the council next Tuesday. And I think we have everything from the use of secondary irrigation to those who may use culinary and can afford the tier system we have. And that's our concern as a city, is turning to the culinary irrigation, and you have the ability to fund it. And I think that's all those discussions to take place. So I think the city will come up with eventually a program for helpful suggestions. But for the interim, barring the city, your Weber Basin Conservancy District does have some demonstration gardens. They do have a website, and I don't know what's on there. You probably know better than I do. Yeah.
So on April 27th, which is in a couple weeks, the USU Extension in Kaysville has Irrigation Basics, changing your spray to drip class. It's $15, and you can register for that, and I imagine it will fill up. So if you just Googled USU Kaysville Botanic Center irrigation classes, it's the first thing that comes up. There's also, I know this is sort of out of our livelihood here, but if you go down, Jordan Valley Water Conservancy District has a great conservation garden, and they have a whole house that they've mocked up with okay, you're familiar with that one, but they also have classes. If you can't get into this one, they have classes down there too.
That's what I was going to mention, is the other Jordan Valley, but I think we're in the beginning steps on even the city getting involved with helping residents, because the lack of irrigation water also means potential use of our culinary water system, and that's a concern. We're lucky here in Centerville, we have wells, but they have been drawn down. They're, I've heard as much as 30 feet than usual. And we also buy culinary water wholesale from Weber Basin, and they have restrictions that are going on. So we want to be careful about our use of our culinary water. So I think conservation we're at our first 4 steps of really making water conservation an element. And then the state has also required this legislative session for all cities by 2025 to adopt a water element in their general plan. So it doesn't give you immediate skills other than Home Depot and grabbing the worker there of what to buy, but try some of these training classes. USU Extension for their agricultural may be a resource, but,
And one thing I would just caution from personal experience, if you are on Dual Creek water, you'll really want to get a good filter.
Filter,
A
yeah.
filter that you change out and clean out regularly, otherwise your drip will clog the first time it turns on. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We're just huge.
there is one well that they measured is 30 feet lower than it has been in the past.
Well, and I also like the idea of getting a meter for proactive, like, understanding of water usage, because truly, it's either like you only water once or never at all. But if you had, if you're looking at how you're watering and you're watering at night and you're using drip systems and efficient systems, there could potentially not be that restriction. You could say, well, I could water these multiple whatever days because I'm not using this crazy amount as well, so.
And just on the well, I mean, it's different wells are gonna be in different places. It's also how much each well has a personality and how much of the recharge takes place and the drawdown, which we're using to fill the different tanks with, because we pump those on off-peak hours to save electricity for the demand charge. But yeah, we are seeing a little bit of drop in our wells. The positive, it doesn't solve our drought, but the last storm has peaked a little higher on the Snowtail site, so it's given us a little bit of an edge for the water melt off, but probably not anything extremely significant. But if we can stay cool, it's that drop off, if we can stay cool with this last storm and this colder weather, we're still in a world of hurt. We were on a downfall pretty fast just during that warm trend. So,
Okay,
Dana Bay. So-
good discussion. I like it. I like the, oh, right. Okay,
Close.
we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you, everyone. I love the public, it doesn't mean you have
That
to
doesn't mean-
leave.
you get to
can
still
stay and
hear
listen if
what
you
we
want,
say.
but That's okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your participation. Man,
They saw an opening and they took it.
that's one way to clear the room, isn't it? Okay, we've closed the public hearing, and now we can discuss among the commission. Anybody else want anything else to discuss?
I probably should have asked them before they left, but the tree board guy, did he say something about how if you do water-wise, it can harm the trees?
You don't have enough water. It happened in Salt Lake City, even in those huge park strips, and the trees can't make it, a lot of them without the supplemental water.
Yeah.
He has talked about that a couple times, about.
So as part of your drip, you're supposed to put in something additional for your tree?
If you want to keep your tree.
You wanna
His
keep-
perspective is
I think a
you should
tree
have a
would
tree.
require more than a drip irrigation.
Okay, thank you.
So is there anything in here that addresses, when we talk about the park strip in particular, is there any comment about trees at all?
There's not, there's been a long, ongoing conversation about trees.
Yeah.
We're getting maybe closer in that discussion, but it's been a very sensitive topic because
Don't start it tonight.
there's competing interest on the use of trees.
I'm working on
Is
it.
that version 2?
I feel like
Maybe?
that's definitely
Yeah,
next step.
that's
not-
fine.
Yeah, and I think it goes hand in hand. I think it's a great time to bring it back up because, if we're getting water-wise, it just helps protect the trees and it helps our sidewalk program and protect our utilities because that utility corridor is getting, more crowded every year.
Well, I do know that the city went around and anywhere there were lifted sidewalk panels, they were actually cutting down trees that were causing the problem.
In some
Whether
places,
the
we were
residents liked
moving.
it or not, because it causes a safety problem. So, eventually it's gonna be a problem.
I believe they sent out letters to each property owner
It's
asking
voluntary
if
right
they
now.
would volunteer for that.
Okay.
I was sure sad though to drive up my iconic street once the trees were gone.
Yeah.
It changes the whole look and feel of the neighborhood, but that's not today's discussion.
Agreed.
I
Very
have a-
sensitive topic.
I have a question about, in the beginning, we have two statements that talk about turf-style grass. Do you have a definition for turf-style grass?
Don't, we just use turf, meaning the turf species or turf, because this is the whole issue that you have those promoting in the park strip a cool season grass.
Well, there's all kind, like, so, I mean, you could even use a biomeadow grass. But to water and irrigate many of these grasses, it's easy just to do it with spray. But most of the time, they prohibit spray heads in an area less than 8 feet wide.
Right.
Which you haven't specified that specifically in here. So,
You mean, we do specify that if it's less than 8 feet, and then we do quote.
right, but
state.
not regards to irrigation. So you could have, you could still technically have water efficient
Grass.
plant material in your park strip and water it with spray heads,
Right, in here, we're just,
according to this.
yes, according to this, where you're flip the strip or looking for drip only.
Yeah, but to be eligible for your, yeah, you have to have drip only. So that,
I mean, we could get to that point, but I was just really trying to be that little bit of hands-off that we'll do some water conservation, but we're not gonna tell you how you build your sprinkler system. But you're right, that if you do a flip the strip, they don't even want a bubbler. It's too much water. They want it to be drip only.
and you can, in fact, there is underground irrigation drip that does support turf style grass, or whatever kind of grass, whatever kind of plant material you want to support it underneath. And they do that a lot in golf courses, on the berm edges of, where the grass meets the sand trap. And they do it a lot in Arizona. And so technically the use of this underground drip irrigation system would use less water, and you could still technically have a turf style grass above it, and your water consumption would be less.
Yeah, it just seemed like all the model ordinances were just attacking the turf and getting rid of it.
Yeah.
What about using that to address trees?
I mean, yeah. There are.
Talking about trees tonight, never mind.
Don't talk about
I was gonna say,
trees.
didn't we decide we're not talking about trees?
We're done.
But I did try to suggest, because you have the two types, so H is talking about, hey, just use a smart system,
Yeah.
but I is also trying to say, for your non-turf, you should be using a drip.
Yeah.
But you're right, it wouldn't prohibit a spray head.
Yeah. Help me understand the 90% of all plant materials should be water-wise plantings.
That is in the model ordinance that's promoted by Weaver Basin.
Who classifies it as a water-wise plant? Could I then say, oh, hey, this is just native, and that means I'm not actually having a manicured yard at all, and this is just native plant material, and I've got rabbit brush in there, and I've got sagebrush in there, and I actually haven't done anything, I just built my house and then walked away, and I am 90% water-wise plantings.
You could get away with that as long as it's not listed in the noxious weeds sections,
Yep.
which then would be a weed ordinance.
Okay?
I mean, we could borrow
Freedom
from
law,
the, we could
right?
borrow from the state, right? The state defines water-wise landscaping in this bill that you included.
But that's why,
Water-wise plant material?
It says water-wise landscaping means any or all of the following, and it gives you some, yeah.
and that's why I kind of punted on the 90%, because you have ordinances say, as listed in our ordinance. And I didn't want our ordinance to be riddled with particular types of plants that gets competing with the nurseries, whether they have that plant. And so I kept some of the generic language I saw in the other ordinances is the water conservation, because some of them will just directly reference Weaver Basin's demonstration garden. And I just referenced, hey, whatever a demonstration garden is or recommended by a landscape architect,
But why did you pick 90%?
it's what the model ordinance is that Weaver Basin is supporting is 90%.
They're not requiring it, though?
If you created a mandatory ordinance, it would be mandatory, but some of the cities are not creating a mandatory ordinance.
Okay, and then my other question is about rock mulch, and the section E. It just says rock mulch used in plant beds should have a depth of 3 to 4 inches. What if you wanted to use, I don't know, some other kind of mulch that's neither bark mulch or rock mulch?
Again, this is the language from the model ordinances supported
Like-
by Weaver Basin.
Tires, rubber
Yeah,
tires?
like rubber, recycled rubber, or
Perlite.
recycled asphalt particles, or,
I know of a park strip where the homeowner went out and they did, essentially, it's like a Trex decking.
yeah.
It's all
I mean,
that's
are-
all prohibited in 11220.
Are they prohibited in 11220?
11220 just says it's either rock or pavers or loosely laid brick. You don't get anything else, and there's a catch-all that says you
Or
can't.
concrete?
Yeah, you can't have concrete.
It can't be paved,
No.
right? Can't be
not-
hard paved.
Not if you, 1120 is pretty restrictive.
Because it has to be accessible for utilities. That's part of the issue, right?
I thought you.
Now, they
could
have
do-
flagstones that are not
Loose- Has
cemented.
to be loosely, non-cemented.
Anything else, Heidi?
I think you bring up a good point. If you are a really good landscape architect, this doesn't necessarily feel all the right to materials, but this is the language model ordinances of Weber Basin.
I say Heidi's expertise over here is just,
Well,
And I think that goes back to where we're doing it as you shoulds right now until we decide that we have a program and whether we're going
I will
mandatory.
say I was a little nervous when there was conversation about culinary water being used on landscape, and hoping they had the appropriate backflow prevention.
They're supposed to, but they don't
I'm
always.
just like,
Yeah.
But, yeah, and Public Works is always looking for that, because
That's
that's
so huge.
incredibly important,
Yeah.
if any kind of backflow.
We've had
So they
instances.
actually actively monitor, if they're out in the field, they're always watching for that.
Yeah, we had instances where a fire hydrant
It
was
happens.
being used at full bore and it filled up the culinary systems with irrigation.
okay.
Those trucks can draw a lot of water.
So really quickly, just kind of in reference to that E spot, there's nothing number,
The rock and mulch.
whatever, rock and mulch, there's nothing we can do about that unless we address 11.220, right? Okay.
But we're taking out the Lisa's suggestion of weed block fabric.
Right.
Right.
But I'm just saying as far as materials used.
Okay, how about this? I'll make a motion and then we can do any other discussion on that motion. I feel like we've done a really good job of discussing this whole issue, so. I hereby make a motion for the planning commission to recommend approval of the proposed zoning text amendments relating to water efficient landscaping, adding a subsection H of the landscaping requirements as follows with the following adjustments to the proposal. On the third line of the thing, unless otherwise provided, we're going to insert such as areas not serviced by a secondary water, did you say company? Service? Company? Service. Let's call it a service. Does that work?
Just say secondary water.
It's not serviced by secondary water.
Okay.
Great.
Source,
Thank
maybe,
you. And then the rest of that would continue as is. Under 3C, park strips less than 8 feet in width, we will strike should install and replace it with are required to comply with, and then it'll continue as written. And then under E, strike and appropriate weed block fabric. With reasons for action A through E in the staff report.
Second.
Whoa.
She wins.
Christina wins.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this
Can I ask a
motion?
question?
You bet.
If it says park strips less than 8 feet, does that mean if we happen to have a park strip greater than 8 feet, it wouldn't have to?
Yeah, because does it count as a park strip at that point?
Yeah, I don't know if we have a park strip.
I don't know if we do.
I don't believe we would, but.
I don't perceive we would,
By
but
the library, some of it's 8 feet, but
In
That's
the curvy part?
yeah.
Or down on the frontage road where we have that trail.
the
and it
Walmart,
does
the Walmart
kind of-
probably does too.
But, I mean, I know you're pulling that 8 feet out of this bill that you gave us,
Yeah.
because the state says 8 feet throughout this
Yeah.
thing.
I was just curious if it would cause problems down the road. I have no idea.
I think it's such a corner case that maybe it's not worth,
We'll just not pay attention.
yeah. Any other discussions, thoughts, comments, concerns? Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and vote on the motion, essentially the proposal with a couple of changes to it. So let's start on this end.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Great, that motion passes. Thanks, everyone. That was a good discussion.
Great staff work, thank you.
Yes. Look forward to version 2. Is this our next food truck ordinance, Lisa?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about parking amendments. Corey, take it away.
Thank you, Chair Daly. Just directing you to the staff attachment, and we can scroll down to the bottom of the table where they have the number and type of parking spaces, and I should have said stacked spaces. But it's in that section. I don't think that says, I think this is a subsection of that heading. I talked to ESI Engineering, Cody, who did our study. He said the ITE manual doesn't have any recommendations. So he referred to this Mike Spack study done in 2012. And so the language on the left of the table is what he sent me. I put the current city code onto the right, and due to me trying to skirt out for vacation, I didn't come up with any answers on the stacked spaces. So that's a place to look at and have a discussion about. They're measuring it in a foot, which is basically your distance from car nose to car nose. If you have multiple lanes, I think there's some things of calling it out by just the length of feet, because you could have 3 lanes that instead of each one being 140 feet long, it would still meet the 7 vehicles. And then the other area, I left in the discussion at the very bottom where we talk about getting a modification, but I went back up into the center under parking modification and started changing this shared parking demand. And so the best example is to look out west, where we allowed a significant portion of shared parking for the Bridge Community Church. And this is where I think I've always been uncomfortable, is that you approve a modification, the parking goes away, you give the zoning administrator 30 days, you tell him it's gone, what am I gonna do?
Be the bad guy?
No, you will tear down that portion of the building and add it.
Yeah.
No, I gotta go tell your neighbors that you can't withdraw your use of that commitment. It's a perpetual commitment for 99 years, or at least till Corey retires.
Can't meet here anymore?
So, I just started trying to, I started trying to address that, to take it out of that place and say, hey, really, they're gonna be available, like we said, they're continuous. You're not gonna get building additions and changes if you don't figure out a way to come up to your parking standard or make another arrangement. I'm not sure it's perfected language. I'm not sure Lisa's even had a chance to really peruse it. And, but those are the 2 hot sections, I think, for the commission to discuss. And when we come to some resolution, we can start advertising it for zone text amendment.
Okay. Yeah, as far as, well, maybe we'll come back to stacking in a second if we could, Corey. So on your proposed update for like parking studies and modifications and whatnot, it's on page, well, it says 47 of mine, but that's the whole packet. Number 2D, keep going, wait, let's see.
Right there.
No, scroll down, sorry. Keep going. That one, right there. The D, all industrial uses, as listed in the chapter, shall be prohibited from obtaining any parking modification. Any. So, You're just talking about industrial uses, not industrial zone with a non-industrial use, so,
So you're just talking about the warehousing section?
yeah,
There's only like 4 uses listed in that industrial use section.
okay. So we're not talking about the dance studios here? Because that's a non-industrial use.
That's a
that-
commercial use allowed in industrial zone.
Okay,
That's the difference.
gotcha. I wanted to make sure I clarified that. Understood
And that was,
that.
that's the intent, is industrial uses, not industrial district.
Gotcha.
Because there's a limited number of uses in the industrial section.
Which is kind of addressed in C, right?
It is. It's just back to my anxiety that when somebody sells a warehouse, and again, we did modify a little bit, said your first 20,000 square feet or something, we're going to calculate it at this, and then so much for every 10,000 square feet after that. But it still comes down to that if you're truly just a warehouse,
You probably don't need that much parking. All right, so in my mind, I don't really know where to start with the stacking stuff, and maybe other commissioners do. I'd like to hear other thoughts, or what kind of direction could we give Corey on where to go with that before this all comes back for an actual zone text amendment.
Well, when I look at this, the first thing I think is we're way off of, I mean, maybe I can't tell, but it looks like 3, versus 7 or whatever seems like we're way off. And then I also think, how are we going to get to where we need to be? Because that's.
there's 12 vehicles at fast food.
Yeah,
Doesn't cover In-N-Out Burger,
like,
Chick-fil-A.
first of all,
Well,
we say 5 per lane. That's not even close to anything that's happening. And even if it's not even close to anything that's happening, it's definitely not close to what this report is telling us to do either,
Yeah,
so.
Only 12 vehicles, period, 12 stacking vehicles. At least we have 5 per lane, which is maybe a little low, but if you got a couple of lanes, we get automatically to 10. Fast food, it's just 12 vehicles, no matter how many lanes.
yeah, but I
I don't know,
mean,
it just seems weird.
even the 12, like, let's think about Chick-fil-A, for example. We're gonna talk about from the window, wrapping around the building, and you're gonna get to 12 pretty quick, but.
At the end of the canopy, that's where you're gonna end up. End of the employee canopy.
Right.
Back along the drive aisle,
Yeah,
and then you're done.
and that's it. Yeah.
So I kind of don't like either of them,
Yeah.
Could do like a 2-star rating fast food, this many,
Right.
3-star rating fast
I mean, we
food.
talked about that, right? Your Yelp reviews, oh, you're a 3-car stacking place, okay, got it.
But I don't think in the beginning, like, I mean, I say in the beginning, but I think Dairy Queen was not a 5-star
Stacker.
stacker, but it produced.
For prom it was, though.
But I'm just, every night it did. It's irritating.
It
But
would
I'm
spill
just
out
saying,
a
like,
lot.
I don't think you could, I don't,
Can't predict it.
you can't predict that.
And you can't-
And I
you can't
think
penalize.
things change. I mean, when I was a kid, the place to go eat was Hardee's right there. It's Carl's Jr. now. Nobody goes there. I thought it was closed down. My point is, they have enough parking for the apocalypse. So, I mean, I just,
Agreed, I agree.
It's, yeah, how do you predict it, right?
I don't know.
Well, that's the thing too, is that, I mean, to In-N-Out's credit, they're set up for a lot of stacking. But it just so happens that every once in
And
a
you,
while it's
and
not
you
enough.
know that was not purposely planned.
No, it wasn't, those were created after the fact.
Yeah, the idea that that lot was too big for In-N-Out Burger, and so it was originally slated for their recreational vehicle parking. Otherwise, they wouldn't have
They
bought that
restriped
parcel.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we talked about this with Chick-fil-A, the way that they've reworked their drive-through is at the expense of parking.
Right.
Which I will, eat crow here and say, before COVID, I was like, I don't want to have a ton of drive-throughs because I don't think it's a great thing for our city. And now it's a huge part of how we live. I mean.
And I think
even-
it's gonna be even more. I think we're gonna really see a different model
I don't think it's.
of
But it's
queuing
changed the
lanes
way
and
that
everything
we
else
do
that's going
everything.
on.
But how long until more companies take the Chipotle approach that we've heard about, right? You've got to order beforehand before you even get in line.
Well, and Chick-fil-A took away that option. Like if you.
It used to order.
You used to could order and then meet on their north side and they would
Yeah.
bring it out to you. They've discontinued that.
Yeah.
And
So
part of the
I've
reason-
discontinued my.
You can still,
And part of the reason for
I
that
don't
is
like the waiting
because
line.
the traffic, when that was a pain though, because anyone was trying to pull in there,
You could never back out.
well, queue, and then you're trying to get out of there. So I was like, oh, I don't even like that.
But now you can put your order, but then you still have to get in line and wait in line. So why would I do that? I would just place my order when I get there.
Yeah.
So their system is, but that's a business model.
It is.
That's not for us to solve.
okay, we're off track here, but anyway.
But agreed.
Afterwards, I'll tell you how I feel about stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, this is the hard part is how do you plan for stuff like this? It's tough. It's hard to tell, for sure.
Because even the Wendy's will go through periodic times of like crazy bus, and then there'll be nobody.
Yeah.
I know.
All you can do is set a kind of a fair standard that applies to everybody, because you can't single out and, so that's what we're trying to do here.
Well, so that's the thing is that look at the current
So
city
what is
code.
it?
We have a standard in our current city code. Three for a self-wash, 4 for automatic wash, 5
Three
for fast food.
bank.
Yeah, 3 for a bank. I mean, at this point, part of me is like, yeah, let's just leave it because we can't predict the future.
Could you
12 is
have
actually
some
quite a
language
lot.
that says something about if becomes a problem that, can you do that? Can you do that? That
well-
then you'll work with the police?
Well, and I don't love the per
city to
lane
make it
for
better.
us because, I mean, I can see, let's talk about the per lane. I mean, yeah, maybe it helps create more lanes if they could, but otherwise, if they are limited in space and they can't create another lane, then it just gives them the much lower requirement.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point on that one. Let's think about, Dairy Queen, for example.
Yeah.
They had one lane from the sign to the window, and then if they wanted to extend like 2 lanes beyond the sign, are we saying then that they've got to have room for 5? And maybe they don't have that,
And maybe they didn't even have space to do 2 lanes in the first place, so then they're like, oh, I only have to do 5, whereas another person's like, I don't know. I don't know about the per lane thing, is
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
I mean, it makes sense maybe for a bank, because they're gonna have banks tend to have multiple lanes, multiple teller lanes, right?
My question also is does the queue start, where does the queue start?
At the window?
At the window.
So you order, and you can only have like how many people can you have there versus then the window, is there a double pay
You're saying there's the
window?
order window, then there's the pickup.
There's the order window, there's the pickup window, there's the order,
The menu board.
Menu
order
board.
There's the
And then,
employee
like,
standing out.
Well, yeah, the employee right before it. Like, where does the queue start?
It's generally considered from the pickup window, but there is no
Pickup window.
definitive measurement.
And that, to me, seems a little bit problematic, because if it's from the pickup window, you've got people sitting here at the order kiosk, and it's back there where the issue kind of starts, so, I don't
Although
know.
the people at the pickup window, you still have to consider part of the queue, because they're stopped. They're in
Yeah.
line. They're waiting still, right?
Unless you're a Dairy Queen and everyone's there, like, it seems like it takes forever.
Dairy Queen is
You know what I'm saying? I don't know, I'm just saying, like, I wonder if 5 per lane from the queue, that's definitely not enough in my mind.
I mean, I think we can increase it from a minimum numbers, but I don't think it solves,
Yeah. Current situation.
yeah. I mean, for me, I anticipate if these restaurants fall out in their new model that you're seeing coming up, this convenience model, and I think you're gonna see the fast foods turn into bank, where you have multiple lanes.
Yeah.
The vacuum tube it out, yeah.
Or maybe they roller skate it.
Fries just explode all over.
Kids are like, here it comes.
Do you want ketchup with that? Launch the tube. Sorry.
Do you want to eat that in your car? Do you want a lap mat for that?
All right. Any direction for Corey, or?
Say for another day, punt.
I
I know
guess
the
I-
commission doesn't punt, but we punt.
We don't punt, Corey. No, it's-
I don't like the per lane, per bay situation. I feel like it creates too many either restrictions or inconsistencies.
Well, I think bays make sense for car washes.
Okay,
Pumps make sense for gas stations,
maybe just the lane.
maybe the lanes.
See, you're saying that makes sense for banks.
I think it makes sense for banks,
Yeah.
but maybe it doesn't make sense for fast food.
But if Corey says it's
But it
changing
might,
to that,
yeah.
it might have multiple.
It may become more.
It doesn't make sense
We
for
don't-
Dairy Queen, Chick-fil-A.
Right now.
Doesn't make
Yeah,
sense
we're-
for a lot of what we have in our city right now.
Well, and to be fair, one of the reasons why we're talking about parking is because we seem to have this endless flow of parking modifications that come through to us.
Yes.
And other than what used to be Dairy Queen, occasionally In-N-Out and occasionally Chick-fil-A, stacking hasn't been
Except
a
for,
huge
Dutch
issue.
Brothers, when it came out on Parrish, that was fun.
well, that was.
But they had the
terrible.
police there prepared for that, right?
Has it gone away? Have you noticed?
I haven't noticed it.
You mean for the grand opening?
Yeah, the grand opening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
kind
I'm
of
saying,
short
what
term.
about the new development on the west side, though? They were trying to figure out the queuing with everything and how much they were gonna have there. So it does come up still. And if we're looking at the, life after pandemic change, then I think it's gonna continue to come up. So I think we need to kind of think through maybe a
Well,
little bit there.
I don't think it fixes it completely, but you could take the fast food and spin off the study and say, you could do something like 12 vehicles, and then something is, if done by lanes, 5 per lane. So if you have 2 lanes, you're
Well, but if you
at
12.
10. So do 10
10.
minimum for your assumption is 10, but if you then go to multiple lanes,
We don't
you do
even
2
deal
or
with
5.
lanes. They can deal with lanes however they want. We just
Yeah.
say 10,
10,
10.
and then they can figure out how many lanes they want to
how
have.
they want that to
They
look.
could do 3 lanes of 3 if they
Right
wanted
now, we're
to.
saying 12.
3 lanes of 4.
No, this is what we're saying.
Can do math.
This is what they're.
But that at least
this study said.
attenuates a little bit of the snake that might go into some 90-degree stalls,
Right.
where 5 is probably insufficient for a single line
Right.
of cars.
Maybe that's a modification we make on the fast food, is to
Yeah.
do it that way.
I like
Does that
that.
work? Okay.
So 10
10,
vehicles?
I think 10. That's a
We
lot.
just say 10 vehicles.
Why 10, why not the 12 that is reflected?
The recommendation was 12.
Because it's closer to the recommendation, but we're only at 5 now, really, if you think about it.
Well, that's part of the problem.
So let's go up to 12.
I just say go with the study, go with 12, and then let the significant outliers be enforced on using like the biz licensing or something like that. If you've got a business that's causing problems, you've got biz licensing ordinance.
Blocking
problems.
traffic, stuff like that, there's some other areas you can deal with.
Like, we don't have to use the ordinance to solve 100% of the cases, just go for 75 and let the other ones be dealt with in other methods, better tailored tools.
Okay, 12. Yeah, I can support it.
What about putting feet behind it?
Yeah, I could just calculate in what that.
Yeah, but they
distance
assume
is.
that every vehicle's 20 feet long,
Yeah.
or that you're gonna have a 15-foot
Or
vehicle
spacing.
and 2.5 feet
Well,
in front and back, but.
I'd say do 12 vehicles, 240 feet, and
Let it be.
let it be. And then there's, vehicles can change, but I think that's close enough,
The reason why the feet would be helpful is if someone's building
yeah.
and they're like, well, what's 12? Like,
What is a
I
vehicle?
got my smart car here.
Yeah, exactly.
They're so teeny.
What's the car that's exempted from the motorcycle? I'm driving that little 3-wheel because I can sit in instead of straddle it.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Governor sign.
Okay,
And then if you're a nuisance restaurant, you're one star, and then we just cite you for nuisance.
yep. Okay.
So is there any other case, so that we've got the per bays for everything else per pump. Are we comfortable with those numbers?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it.
Can we also change the 3 to the numeral, just so it matches everything else?
Yeah, that's true.
On bank.
Bank, make it actually be a numeral 3 instead of word 3.
And either like put periods behind all of them or not. Like, this is just my editor coming in.
Yes, we can do that.
That's a big ask.
All right. Let's move on then. Let's go to our next item on the agenda, which is the Community Development Director's Report and City Council Report. Corey?
Okay, so go to the agenda. We do not have anything scheduled by application submittal for your next meeting. We do have some, after attending the legislative update at the planning conference, we have a accelerated deadline on moderate income housing for October 1st now, instead of December 1st. I attended a training partially because I was in another meeting before I got to it with Utah League of Cities and Towns. I grabbed their presentation and the slide. I think there's a significant tone change to the moderate income housing than is in the past. Some are kind of picking on that tone. Others are trying to say it's better because it does some helpful, better reporting back to the state. And so I could, if you wanted to use that meeting to update you on that training, because we need to get together as either separate bodies or a single body with the city council, go with what our strategies we've selected. They've modified the language of many of those strategies, so we have to change the language of any strategy that we've used. But they've added 6 additional strategies, and I think we need to have a discussion of, first of all, the strategies we picked, are we still okay with? And change and pick some new ones, because you have to add some timelines to them now. So now we have to figure that out. And there is not penalties, but as you apply for the TIF money and the other elements that you can get for transportation funds, if you only have to adopt 3, if you adopt 5, you get on a preferential list if you're competing with another city. And so I think we have to be a little bit more serious about what our goal selections are and a little less casual about, I'm not saying we haven't done anything because we did the ADUs and so forth, but we just have to be more disciplined and be a little more selective. So I'd like the planning commission at least to be updated with that, so we could use that meeting if you can still make it.
Can we, so pause for just a second, Corey. Let's talk about that next meeting real quick. Heidi mentioned that she's not going to be here because there's a junior high dance company.
I may not be here, so.
So it might be fortuitous, we don't know.
Well, it might be fortuitous. I mean, we could have a quorum even without these 2, but if anybody else is at risk of not being here, then we're in big trouble. So I don't know, maybe we just need to, maybe we need to punt, Corey.
I don't know,
I'm okay with it, I just think it's sooner than later,
especially
because
if we don't have a busy meeting coming up, you can just put it with another one.
and I'm fine if you want to cancel it, I don't want to pressure you to it. It just, as a planner thinking, is the general plan, they've delayed at UDOT and said it'll be about a week from now that we may hear from them. And if we get the general plan kicked off, I've also got to get this moderate income precursor to the general plans finished, so I can hit the October 1st deadline
Well,
with the state. And so I'd rather not wait too long. It's not, I
sure.
don't need it next meeting, but I think we need to,
Here's the thing,
Hit it earlier.
I think that what you're talking about there, Corey, with these, maybe getting a little more serious about moderate income housing stuff is valuable for the whole commission to
Agree.
talk about.
I agree.
We're gonna be missing 2 key members, which puts us at risk of not even having a commission. Or a quorum. We don't have any applicants that'd be sitting and waiting for us, so maybe we do just cancel our next meeting and try and work in that moderate income housing.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. I'm just bringing it up as a suggestion.
Yeah. Is anybody opposed to that idea?
Well, I don't want to, I agree, I don't want to put it off either, so I think if we can find a spot, maybe the next meeting or something,
Okay,
First meeting in May?
yeah.
okay.
Okay, let's
That's
do
fine
that,
with me.
Cory.
Hogan Steel, the PDO was approved, and I put in your goals. Chair Daley did mention on our new agenda format, we do have we asked for a legislative administrative button, pull-down, drop-down menu, but we didn't see that when we first put this agenda together. We'll try to figure out where that's labeled, or if it's not been put in, we can type it in, but
Yeah, the other feedback to this with the new agenda, sorry, is that in the old format, like the Community Development Director's report, there would at least be a page in there that would say, here's what we're doing, and it would a lot of times just repeat what's on this agenda here, right? But there's not a filler page, at least when I print the whole packet.
Cover sheet.
Yeah,
Cover sheet, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
for some reason, just that section doesn't create it, so I'll work.
Okay.
yeah, if you
I
go to
think we
the
have to-
agenda, it shows it, but the agenda item in files does not.
Well, yeah, yeah, it doesn't have a cover sheet.
I'll be honest with you, I can't let go of Nova's agenda. Just
Yeah,
one
you got it
more-
pulled up right here.
I know, I did the Nova's agenda this week, and I'm like, gosh, do one last time.
No, I'm liking this new system, it's just,
Because I don't want to double it again.
Okay,
we got some
Let's
kinks to
try.
work out. Okay, anything else, Corey, you're good?
Good.
Okay. Let's go on then to talk about our minutes from the previous meeting, which was a fairly short meeting, so. Does anybody have any recommended changes or anything on page 1?
I would say,
Yes.
just because I didn't just express encouragement, I also expressed encouragement and encouraged her to pay, charge for her services. I think that's important,
You did.
so, because she thought that was important.
Her husband definitely thought that was important.
He did.
So do you want to, let's see, you're talking about on line 40.
40. So, I just like it to say, Commissioner Wright expressed encouragement, or not expressed encouragement, I encouraged Miss Reynolds to charge for her services and thanked her for going through the proper channels.
Okay. Sounds good. Got that, Mackenzie?
Yep.
And then on line 47, do we need to make any adjustments on line 47 to match then?
No, I think that's just a general sort of,
Okay,
it references it fine.
so, yeah, if you're okay with it. Okay, page 2. Page 3? Great.
Chair, I move to accept the meeting minutes from 3/23/22. I guess 2022?
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do this one together. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.